Hello everyone, my name is Serhad Doken. We're in Barcelona Mobile World Congress 2017. The show is buzzing with 5G and IoT technology demonstrations. And today we will be talking about connected vehicle, connected transportation, enabling a new set of contextual services. With vehicle-to-vehicle technologies coming to vehicle-to-vehicle communication coming to connected cars, and a lot of vehicles being instrumented with sensors, I see a connected vehicle as a moving computer with a lot of electronic control units, hundreds of sensors, which will be collecting a lot of data. Today we will be talking about evolution and eventually the revolution of the industry. Today I'm joined on the stage here by four great panel participants. So I'm going to turn on to them, give them the chance to introduce themselves and to our audience.
Thank you very much. Kenny Hawk, CEO of Mojio, based in Vancouver and Palo Alto, and we're building an open connected car cloud platform for carriers. We launched in November with T-Mobile nationally in the US, and then Deutsche Telekom is going to be rolling out all through Europe. We started in the Czech Republic, and we'll be at about 500,000 customers by the end of this year, and somewhere between 2.5 and 3 million next year. So looking forward to talking about what we're doing and why customers care.
Hi, Emmanuel Rivet. I'm a partner with PwC based in San Francisco. I work solely in technology and spend a lot of time obviously with clients who are somewhat related to mobile technology, well, somewhat or very directly related to mobile technologies and driverless cars, so looking forward to address the trends.
I'm Tim Hutcheson, and I'm with the Institute for Human and Machine Cognition in Pensacola, Florida, and we do research in robotics and artificial intelligence.
Samian Kaur, I'm from InterDigital, and we're working on this contextual driving platform, which includes analytics and crowdsourced sensor information for self-driving cars.
So Kenny, I want to first turn to you as an emerging and disruptive startup from Silicon Valley, where everybody's talking about autonomous driving, connected vehicle. How about the 1 billion cars, the installed base on the road? Should we care about them? How should we be thinking about them? How can we offer services to everyone right now rather than waiting 5 to 10 years?
So it's a great question. There are a lot of cars on the road, and every car since 1997 has an onboard diagnostics port, and every car in Europe since 2001 has the same port. And so with a very easy add-on of a module, you can turn every one of those dumb cars into a connected car. And the reason that's important with the coming self-driving and semi-autonomous vehicles is just having a little information about each of those vehicles would be incredibly helpful. The best example I can give, I was in Munich a couple months ago watching the first peloton of 5 semi-trucks with double-decker trailers traveling down the Autobahn at 170 kilometers an hour, separated by 3 meters. Now, when a new car that jumps in front of that peloton happens to be a rapid accelerator or a harsh braker, you'd like to know about that. If you don't know anything about the cars around you, you'll have to take the most conservative assumptions. So just having a little bit of data that this is a car that does a lot of rapid lane changing or harsh braking, you'll create a different buffer zone for the autonomous vehicles. So all of our partners, Deutsche Telekom, T-Mobile, want the ability to share that data with the coming autonomous vehicles. Just a little bit of data will go a long way there.
So can you give us more color about what Mojio is specifically doing?
Sure. Sure. So with our carrier customers, we're lighting up a dongle. So it's a 4G LTE Wi-Fi dongle that has a GPS and very accurate accelerometer in it. So it's basically like a smartphone without the display. This can plug into any car, and you get high-speed Wi-Fi in the car. You know where your car is, and you also unlock the secret information behind the OBD ports. So rather than just a check engine light on the vehicle, you'll now know what's wrong, how critical it is, and whether it's something simple you can fix yourself, like a gas cap that you forgot to tighten, or it's mission critical, you need to pull over before you cause more damage. We'll also let you know how much the repair should cost. So Old way, you drive into a mechanic, you have a check engine light, you say, please help me, and you hope they tell you the truth. New way, you go into the mechanic, you know exactly what's wrong, and you tell them how much you're willing to pay for it. So it's really going to change the game on repairs.
That's great. That's great. So I know there are multiple ways of doing it. For instance, certain companies are trying to go to the consumer directly. So what value do you see working with the mobile operators to offer your services solutions to the market?
Well, carriers have incredible reach. They also are trusted partners. They already have a billing relationship with the consumers. So going B2C can be really expensive. It can take a long time. We're going to immediate scale through the carriers. T-Mobile, when they launched, nationwide launch, all 4,000 stores. They trained 24,000 salespeople. They've increased their order 3 times since we launched on November 17th. Deutsche Telekom, 250,000 employees. They have a huge global footprint. $94 billion company. They get us to scale so much faster. And again, it takes away one of the pain points. How do you set up an account? How do you do billing? They already have those relationships with their customers. So it's about scale, it's about speed, but it's also about trust. The consumers are giving up a lot of data, where they're driving, what they're driving, how they're driving, and having that trusted relationship with a carrier makes it easier. And customers get to decide what they share. I think the easiest example is if you're a very safe and good driver, you'd be happy to share your data with insurance companies so you can save money. You might be a little bit of a wild driver, and you say, I don't want to share the driving data, but I'm happy to get information from Michelin on when I should replace my tires and save money on that. Happy to get the Michelin offer, but please don't share my insurance data. So again, that trust and how to handle all that is all taken care of with the way carriers think about privacy.
Very well stated. Thank you. I just wanted to make a point, go back and touch on what you just said. There are like certain receptivity to sharing data or not sharing data, but what are like some business cases that you see that you feel it's for everyone, and then when you pitch it to your customers, they say, "Oh yeah, I get it. That is pervasive."
Well, the simplest one is having high-speed Wi-Fi in the car. Wi-Fi is becoming like air, food, and water. You expect it everywhere. You want it everywhere, even in the car. And tethering off somebody's phone, draining the battery on their phone, having to remind people, please turn on your Wi-Fi, set up tethering, what's your password and SSID. You don't want all those hassles. You just want it to work all the time. And so having it in the cars, and about 2 out of 10 new cars are coming with connectivity, but it's not going to be till 2021, 2022 to get 7 out of 10 cars connected. So connecting up that 1 billion unconnected is that number one use case, put the Wi-Fi in the car. The second is safety and security. Where's my car? Has it been bumped, towed, or stolen? Is there anything wrong with my car? Today, when you have a recall on a vehicle, the manufacturer mails a postcard to a house you no longer live at for a car you no longer own. Yeah. I've gotten 2 of these, and one of them is a catastrophic recall on a transmission. I have no idea where the person lives that I sold my car to, and yet I'm still getting the recall notices. Now you get a recall notice in your app. They'll tell you how severe it is, and it's for the car you're actually driving. So that's another great use case around safety and security.
Sounds great. So just like every emerging technology with the trend of vertical integration, I see the hardware, apps, services, software all coming together in a platform manner, in an ecosystem. What's your perspective around putting an ecosystem around and offering a platform solution, and what are you guys doing about that?
Great question, and we got to make sure we involve everyone else too in your thoughts. But for me, carriers want the ability to be able to plug in the latest, greatest piece of hardware, and as hardware gets smaller, better, cheaper, faster, they don't want to be locked into one platform. So there have been a couple of attempts where they're forcing a carrier to buy the device, the platform, and the app all from one vendor, and carriers hate that. Because imagine like what happened with Samsung this past year with the disaster on the handset. If a carrier could only sell Samsung handsets, what do you do when you have a problem? So they want that independence. So we decided to be hardware agnostic, let the carrier pick whatever hardware they want. We certify that it's secure, that it works with our protocol. But if something better, faster, cheaper comes out, they have the flexibility to put that on there. And the other piece is having an open API and SDK. So We have a core app that does all the basic things you want, but if you want to do something special or something specific for your business, developers can do that, and all the APIs are open and published. So it makes it easy for people to develop their own apps.
And just to add another dimension to it, I think one of the part of the solution also includes the solution in the vehicle and also in the cloud. So there's another aspect of it which needs the OEMs have to give up control and make sure that there is information that they can share across multiple OEMs, so the information and the learning for each vehicle is more accurate and can be trained at real time and more dynamically. So the solution components, I think, can be split into what's in the car, which is the hardware and the software pieces, and the vendors that need to be assigned, but there's also the partnerships needed to talk through to the cloud and get assistance information, especially for self-driving.
Yeah, talking about partnerships, this is a question dear to my heart. How is Mojio defining the partnerships? How are you getting engaged, and how do you define success?
So we measure success by the customers. Even though we're a B2B to C company, we go through carriers. We care a lot about the actual end user, how they use the product, why they're using their product, and we spend a lot of time asking them what problems are they trying to solve, what do they want out of this. We did lots of UI and UX research. A third of our engineering sprints were spent for onboarding. How do you onboard an IoT device? It's very different than buying something out of the box and it just working. You have to claim the device, you need the IMEI number, you have to set up an account up in the cloud. How do you make all that easy for them? Even finding the OBD port. It was surprising how many different locations the OBD port is in cars. Some are hidden behind trap doors, some are hard to find spots. So working through all of that to make it easy to onboard. And we measure success by customer take-up, and again, we are rapidly accelerating. B, do they stick with the product, and do they recommend it to their friends? And we've had some amazing stories. We had a mom, 3 kids, living in Toronto, and our platform and app realized she was having a battery that was in the process of hitting its end of life. Notified her, connected her with the dealer. She came in for the battery replacement. She was thrilled. Rather than being stuck on the side of the road or missing picking up her kids, she knew ahead of time that the problem was coming. While she was there, she bought 4 new tires. So the dealer was happy, she was happy, and she's a lifelong Mazda customer now. What normally would happen is she'd have a dead battery at the worst possible time. Dealer would have no idea. She'd be upset with the dealer, with the brand, and she's never going to go back there. Somebody else ended up selling her the battery. Now she's solved the problem before it happened. Dealer has visibility, and you create increased loyalty.
Okay. Before I turn on to Emmanuel, I have one other question for you, Kenny. So, can you share some of the development plans that you have, or customer plans you have on your roadmap for 2017 and beyond?
Sure. We're sharing a little bit of our roadmap publicly, but the one key thing that we've been focused on is helping carriers launch. So we launched T-Mobile, launched Deutsche Telekom. We're now prioritizing the rest of the global carriers that we'll launch with. So a lot of 2017 is expanding the footprint globally. On the product side, safety and security are really high on our customers list. 1 out of 3 teens that die in a car. Number 1 cause of death in teens is cars. And it's not surprising that death rate that had been declining has been increasing the last 5 years. After 20 years of decline, it's been increasing the last 5 years. Most attempts at improving teen driving have been around punishment. You're driving too fast, you're braking too much, and punishment works, but it doesn't work as well as rewards and reinforcement. So we're rolling out with our partners a teen driving app that actually encourages independent, good driving behavior. So we talked to a lot of parents, and they said, we spent 16 years creating a independent, good decision-making pre-adult. Then we hand them keys, and we treat them like a baby again. We're flipping that around. So you drive 100 miles without any harsh braking, and harsh braking is the number 1 predictor of an accident. Daddy's going to buy you a tank of gas. You drive 200 miles without exceeding the speed limit, Mom gets you a gift certificate to Nike store. You drive 1,000 miles like an adult, the insurance company will now charge you like an adult and cut your insurance in half. So it's a different way to think about it. The parent gets to pick the reward. The parent is not punishing them, and the teen is encouraged to do something good instead of being punished for doing something bad. And that'll launch at the end of this year.
Great perspective. Thank you very much. Much appreciated. I want to turn to you, Emmanuel. You're in the heart of Silicon Valley, and you're seeing all the technology firsthand. And we're happy to talk about connectivity and sensors and everything, but there is the user aspect of all this. And I know you guys are a data-driven organization. Have you done any research about whether the users are ready for all this technology? Do they understand what's coming for them, and how are they looking at this?
Thank you so much. So I think in terms of are the user ready, so we did a survey actually to directly answer your questions around how consumers are or not ready for the influx of technology that's going to come into their cars. And I think what we found is they're reluctantly ready, meaning it's really not a question of generation actually, and that was a little bit of a surprising finding for us, because we've seen over the past years that the younger generation have been the early adopters of technology, all kinds of technologies. But what we found out when it comes to technology in the car is actually the consumer that is at the middle point of the age range. Those are the ones that are more likely to be interested in automotive technologies than the others. Obviously, we'll have to engage all the companies that are working in that ecosystem. Are going to have to engage with the younger generation, because ultimately they're the one who are going to take those technologies mainstream. But the early adopters are going to be the kind of middle-aged type of range. I think what we learn also in terms of readiness is people know that it's coming. I think they're reluctantly acknowledging it, because the way they expressed that to us in the survey was saying about 2/3 of them said that they know driverless car is unavoidable. But it was more the negative that they were comfortable acknowledging with us, because you still see 54-56% of surveyed individuals acknowledging that they're either scared or they think autonomous cars are dangerous.
So if you were to prioritize all the connected vehicle features, what do you think would be the top ones that people would care and are willing to pay for?
So that's a great question. I think I'm going to make my neighbor actually really happy with that statistics, because the two things that consumers said they really are looking for, one is getting their car more connected, and in particular more connected with their smartphones. So 2/3 of the surveyed users really are expecting that connectivity. And then the second expectation is really around safety. So the type of technologies that users are really expecting are around remote shutdown, comprehensive tracking systems, so some of the things that you talked about, right? So, or even takeover technology, driver takeovers in case of emergency. So everything that's security and safety enabling is something that users are really looking for.
Great. So, autonomous driving is getting all the press, and there's Silicon Valley coming at it from one angle. OEMs have a different angle. There's an operating system angle. There's services angle. So, when you look at your crystal wall, how is this going to shake out, and what's the best combination to make this as a success for the whole ecosystem? What's your view on that?
Yeah, so thank you. So that actually is a question we asked of the consumers that we surveyed, because it's a challenging question. So we didn't want to take a try at it. But what was interesting is when it comes to in-car technologies, actually users or consumers are open to technology companies taking a broader role in the automotive ecosystem. And while I think they still give a hedge to traditional luxury automakers in terms of seeing them as the brand who are going to bring those automotive technologies in cars. I think what they saw as an ideal combination is a partnership between a traditional automaker and a well-known tech companies. They saw that as the winning combination.
You know, there's another key point that I think really has hit the industry is in the past, your car would get worse over time. It wears out, it breaks down more often, and you get less and less out of a car over time. When Tesla did their over-the-air update to add the semi-autonomous feature to every one of their customers, first time ever, your car got better instead of getting worse. And you look at the kind of pace and development of software in the Valley, you know, there are people doing daily builds. Automakers are on a 3 to 5 year design cycle other than Tesla. So that's what's really woken up all the other car makers. It's why GM spent $1 billion to go buy the autonomous driving startup in San Francisco, even before they really hit any kind of real scale. It is you need to be at a much faster pace, and software is going to be a much bigger part of it. Now the quality and reliability and the sensors and how do you produce things that withstand all the harsh environments of a car, OEMs are still awesome at that. Software, they're on the very early part of the learning curve.
Yeah, definitely agree with you on that. I feel like up to 70s, 80s, we were in the mechanical world. In the 80s, we moved into electronics world, and now we're in the software world, AI world. Maybe, Emmanuel, I want to go back to and make a comment, and there's a question for you there to what you said. Beyond connectivity and sensors, in terms of how the user behavior and how we work, live, play, transport, what is going to change if you look at beyond autonomous driving? How is the transportation experience going to change? What are you seeing in the market?
Yeah, so beyond, so for the consumer and then the commercial side, enterprise side of things, right? So on the consumer side, obviously, we think adoption of more technology is likely to come, particularly for driverless cars, likely to come through cars as a service. So ride sharing in particular, I think, is how people are going to be introduced to technology and driverless cars faster than just their own, with their own car. In terms of the commercial aspect of it, obviously there are a lot of benefits there to gain, right? With commercial transportation being automated and made a lot more efficient. I think there is a lot of potential there, and we are starting to see a lot of this coming up out of Silicon Valley. So that's probably, the fancy thing is probably on the consumer side, but the real practical benefit of driverless car is going to come from the industrial use of the industrial and commercial transportation.
Okay. So here's a question that was on my mind that I don't really have a good answer for. I'll rather pose it to you guys. So we have the SRC and also cellular-based V2E technologies. They're going to come into the market. But if you were to move into a world where transportation is offered as a service by, let's say, by an OEM, do you think would that accelerate V2V deployment to vehicles, or would regulation accelerate it, or how do you see that shaking out eventually?
Yeah, I can take a stab at that. I think primarily this V2E has been a little bit of a chicken and egg because the OEMs have been waiting to see the advantages, but I think more and more, especially for self-driving, we believe that the sharing of information is the key to getting from what self-driving tech exists today to taking it to the next level. So how do you take the car today, which works in San Francisco on a highway and Austin, and take it to Chicago and Bombay? And that needs a lot of information sharing, and V2V is the key to that, V2V, V2X. There is also regulations needed, and the push would be there. That would definitely help. Some sort of a mandate would help the push, but there is, I think, parallel realization in the OEM and in the secure that it's needed for safety as well as to take self-driving to the next level.
I think I look back to, I grew up in Detroit, Michigan, And almost everyone I knew growing up worked in the auto industry or in the factories. And I remember when anti-lock brakes first came out, and it was very controversial. Do I want a computer taking over how I brake the vehicle? And you think about when anti-lock brakes get activated, it's when you're in a very dangerous situation. And you couldn't believe how many people resisted the idea that a computer would help them brake more effectively than just pushing the brake as hard as possible and skidding. And we take it for granted today. Every car has anti-lock brakes. But before that came around, consumers were scared to death about a computer braking for them. And look how much it's improved the safety. It's you wouldn't even think about it today. The second thing for me is, even more than regulation, what's going to drive the autonomous is traffic. Any major city, Silicon Valley, it's now an hour commute to go 15 miles. It's going to be 2 hours. There's no more place to put roads. There won't be any new roads in the Bay Area. Mexico City, Mumbai, you cannot pack more cars in without getting them closer together and making them more intelligent. So I think the biggest driver is going to be people's frustration with traffic. When you take it from a half hour to an hour to 2 hours a day of your life in traffic, the motivation is going to be there. And there just won't be anywhere else to put the cars.
So Tim, Kenny opened up the risk angle, and I know you've done a lot of work there. So I want to ask you, I know I'm a risk on the road to others. So how should we think about eventually when you have self-driving cars on the road, unconnected cars on the road, connected but human-driven cars on the road? What are the risks that are going to happen? How are these different sets of groups understand each other, collaborate with each other, or maybe not collaborate with each other?
Well, my reaction immediately to that was that if the autonomous cars knew how risky the humans were, they probably wouldn't be on the highway. But one of the things that we've been working on, in fact, Samian and I have been working closely on, is developing algorithms that allow the cars to share the risk in a network-like fashion and carry the risk forward in time, so that cars become more aware of approaching risk from behind if there's a car that's carrying more risk coming through the traffic. And it turns out that this is actually a very local phenomena as well as a phenomena going forward in time. So we feel like by developing these types of algorithms with V2V and V2X that we can improve the risk, lessen the risk for both the human drivers, and similarly applies to the autonomous vehicles. They need to also understand what the behaviors are and learn to anticipate things like when to brake. And in doing that, you get back to the case like in Mumbai where the traffic is very dense. When it's fully applied, it actually affects the traffic flow. And that's the direction that we're headed.
Absolutely right.
So in order to collaborate with each other, I see vehicle-to-vehicle technology is critical doing that, to also exchange the sensor data. So can you talk about the technology demonstration that we have or how are we mitigating those risks?
Okay, yeah, we developed a platform to allow us to analyze the behavior of people actually driving cars and the reactions of how autonomous vehicles should behave in that same situation. And the demo that we're doing here at the show illustrates that in a virtual reality environment where the driver with the VR headset is able to experience the cars around them, but not just see the cars, but actually see the data and the risks that they're carrying and how the data is moving back and forth between the cars. So it creates sort of a matrix-like experience that's rather interesting because we couple the virtual cars with the physical table that the cars are actually moving on. So you get this sort of an augmented reality experience is what we're really after. And within the goggles, you can see the risk bubble that a car is carrying as it approaches you. You can see data moving. And so it's a rather interesting demonstration about that technology.
So you're giving a sense to folks on the trade show floor how you map the physical to virtual, and how is it going to feel like in the future when you're driving the car, sharing the road with self-driving cars.
Right.
How will they know about how am I driving versus you're driving? You're a safe driver, I'm not. How will they learn from us?
Well, yeah, and more importantly, that if if for example, when I drive and there's a guy with a Mustang GT moving up along that right lane because he knows the way the merge is happening, if my car can be aware of that and begin to take a different strategy for its control, like the polite thing to do is back off a little bit because you know he's going to take that space in front of you, then if it's done cooperatively, the whole traffic flow is actually much, much better.
Thank you, Tim. Samian, we're going to have a multitude of sensors on the cars, cameras, radars, lidars, and the price point is coming down really fast. Rather than an $80,000 lidar unit, we're talking about $250 and putting into my tail lights and everything. So they're going to be generating an enormous amount of data. So what can a platform do with that data to fuse that in real time? What does that open up for us?
So there are two aspects to that. I think one is in the standalone vehicle itself. The fusion aspect is needed whenever you have these sensors working, and let's say one of your sensors starts failing or the validation, something is seeming off in the sensor, and this data fusion aspect there is to combine information from the other sensors to validate, so because you're making safety, life and death decisions, so redundancy and validation is needed. But there's another aspect of this, and that's taking this fusion information outside the car and driving it across in a crowdsourced manner. And that is what is going to take the self-driving technology we have today and take it to the future so that it can work in bad weather conditions, it can work in unstructured roads, it can work in Mumbai where the people are in very close intersections and corners. And for that you need information and the machine learning that's being done today to be able to get information not only from their own sensors, but also sensors nearby. So if they are detecting a pedestrian nearby, then if they can confirm that with another vehicle, so in case there is some unreliability in their own information, that can make them more dynamic and then can now take this technology to the future. So I think the challenge for the industry now is how do you take the self-driving car, which works in very close, structured, constrained environments, and take it to Chicago, to Mumbai, to Singapore.
Great answer. Maybe I want to follow up that with if you consider Google Maps or Waze as a state of the art today that consumers are used to, when you can collect data from all the sensors in the car, what is going to be possible that is not possible today, or what do you see in the roadmap as next generation applications or services, contextual transportation services that can be offered?
So let's put yourself in a self-driving car in 2025, and you have to go to work, and you have a meeting, and you plan to take a video conference, and along the way the conditions have become foggy, and your car realizes it can no longer self-drive itself. So this kind of service that you need in this case is based on crowdsourced information, based on data analytics, based on the sensor capabilities in your car should be automatically able to figure out which is the route I can take to maximize the self-driving and allow this operation. And that needs knowing what are the capabilities of the sensors, what are the cars on the road with similar capabilities, how do you predict, how will the sensor perform in that, and then you making very intelligent decisions which are completely seamless to a user, so the user can just drive his car and take his call. This is one of the applications.
So two things. One of the worst accidents I ever saw was on Highway 94 from Detroit to Chicago, about 75 miles an hour coming along a long banking curve, and there was black ice, and you didn't see it until you hit it. One car, next car, next car, next car. I was in a chain of 50 cars that spun out on I-94, and I was the 50th. They were scattered on the left, but mostly on the right side of the road because it had banked, so luckily they spun, slid, and went off the bank. As I'm spinning around, looking at the semi-truck coming at me, I'm thinking about if I had just known that ice was there. I didn't see it because the only warning you get is the brake lights hitting. And when you're coming around a curve at that speed, you're not going to see the brake lights. Vehicle to vehicle, the very first car that hit that ice would send out an alert. All the other cars after it, you'd have one car spin out and the rest of them would know. So thinking about things in that instant and then changing the behavior of the car is critical. The other thing that I've thought about analogies to self-driving and traffic management, and the best analogy I could use is computer networking when you first launch Token Ring, and then you think about CDMA. Before that, you would try to jam as much traffic through the same port as possible. You'd have collisions and you have to have multiple retries, and it's very inefficient. Once you just get a little bit of information, it's my turn to go down this channel, now it's your turn to go down the channel, you could pack a lot more information in the same lane of highway. So everything we've learned in computer networking and how to get more through the same small pipe, many of those lessons will end up applying on the road as you get intelligence.
Kenny, I had a similar experience to yours with a car which was texting. Had my car been aware of the risk that that car was generating ahead of time, I wouldn't have come up alongside of that car. My wife and I were nearly killed in a spin out caused by somebody looking at their multimedia device or cell phone, and when they did that, they have a tendency to turn to the left and turned right into us, and evading them, we spun out and went down the side of a mountain. We walked away from it smiling, but it really made me think that if the cars can be contextually sensitive about the behavior and risks that other people are carrying, then my car would have known not to pass or not to get as close or as rapidly to that car.
Absolutely, and one of the new applications that we were surprised about is a company that's been working on aircraft and aircraft predictive maintenance. Because with planes, you can't wait till they break to fix them. You have to fix them before they break. And one of our partners has been doing that for 20 years with jumbo jets and airliners to figure out what system is going to break and what are the early warnings and how do you look at the big data to figure that out ahead of time. They're now going to apply that to the car industry using our data. And what happens and what will happen is that automakers will find out about quality issues a model year sooner. Today, by the time they find out the issue is there and that it's statistically significant, they've already put that same faulty component or system into the next model year. So you're knowingly shipping faulty product. You find out a year earlier, the cost savings are unbelievable, and number of lives will get saved.
So actually, that highlights one of the needs of analytics as well. So as you're driving these cars and the sensors, they'll sometimes misbehave or they'll sometimes fail. And I think the industry we need to still figure out how do you figure out that your sensor is misbehaving or failing. And as you said, like how does the mom take her car to the mechanic automatically knowing that her radar is not working, for example, or her lidar is giving her inaccurate, because sensors lose calibration, they have temperature variations, and things can not work exactly as they are right now running.
And just thinking about this, when we did our survey, actually 66% of the interviewed people told us that they actually are convinced that the technology in cars is smarter than the average driver, and that's going to get a long way in getting people comfortable with being on the road with cars that are driverless, etc.
Do you see anything changing in the insurance market based on all this extra granularity of data that we're going to have?
Absolutely, and the first wave started about 6 years ago with usage-based insurance. Progressive would send you a dongle. If you let us track your driving, we'll give you a discount. And it was all about figuring out who the better drivers are. That wave is 196 trials globally on usage-based insurance. The second wave is we notice that you're harsh braking far more than is safe. Based on our analytics, you're going to have an accident in the next 2.5 months. If you continue driving that way, we're going to have to raise your insurance rates. If you reduce your harsh braking, we'll give you an additional discount. And long term, they're actually going to talk about hotspots. 101 freeway and the 405 down in Southern California, as people rent their car at LAX, they come around that intersection, it's always backed up, there are accidents there every single day. People that live there avoid it because they know it. People that fly in get in accidents every single day. So Hertz and your insurance company will nudge you. This is a tough spot. Accidents are here every day. You need to slow down. And doing that preventatively instead of after the fact. And then the last piece is, and I have a neighbor who's 96 years old, still lives alone, drives her own Cadillac. She went to get her license renewed. Went through the whole thing, passed the test. They issued her license, and she said to the DMV, "Are you out of your frickin' mind?" And what are you talking about? You extended my license for another 4 years. I'm going to be 100 years old. You really think I'm going to be able to drive 4 years from now? You should be giving me a 6-month license. I mean, I want to make sure I'm safe to drive. And when you take the keys away from an aging parent, what's the right time? Well, now you have the data. You'll start to see that they're drifting, they're driving too slow, too fast. Time to get them some help and maybe put them in a driverless car. So the insurance companies are all over this.
Emmanuel, you were going to make a
No,
point?
just I agree with that. I think also the way insurance is charged has started to change, right? Instead of being more like fixed premium, things are becoming more variable, just to be able to intake all those different data points. So I think you'll see a lot more variable types of insurance premiums.
Don't start talking about taking my license away.
We didn't say that.
So Kenny, you're a serial entrepreneur. This is like the 6th time you have been a CEO. So how do you put the connected vehicle opportunity with respect to others that you've been involved in? Or are you going to go for a Sweet 16?
So I've been very fortunate to have been part of some great startups. This one is like nothing I've ever seen before. We have been in Deutsche Telekom's booth all week, holding our meetings inside Deutsche Telekom's booth. Deutsche Telekom went on stage yesterday with us and talked about their core growth initiative for 2017 is the connected car. You know, a year ago we were fighting to get attention. Now we're sitting in Deutsche Telekom, one of the largest carriers, and they're telling us that's their key growth initiative for the year. And we've gone from 16 people to 44. We'll be at 75 to 80 people by the end of the year. And because we're software only, it's so much easier to scale. So A, love being in a software only business, and B, a business that the carriers are just desperate for. They've connected all the people, they've connected all the homes. Your next most valuable thing is your car. And even though I grew up in Detroit, what really jumped out at me is how much people spend on their cars. They spend about 8 times more on their car than they do in wireless. You look at this industry. We're here in Mobile World Congress in Barcelona, yet you spend 8 times more on your car, between the car, the insurance, fuel, tires, brakes, repairs, car washes, and yet most of the things in the car have been done the same way for 100 years. So this industry, the pace of change is unbelievable. 3 years ago, you had a couple OEMs in Silicon Valley. Now every OEM has a scouting or development office in Silicon Valley.
Definitely agree with you on that. It's convergence, evolution, and eventually revolution. And even though maybe revolution is not going to happen right away, it's small slice of evolution, and one day you're going to wake up and you're there. Samian, you had a point that you wanted to make?
No, actually, I was keying off one of the things that was said earlier about the risks in the cars, the driving behavior. Some of the things we didn't talk about is it's like cities and connection between vehicles and cities. Smart cities would be things like certain cities know that certain intersections are more dangerous, and harvesting a lot of this information is just starting to be collected, but there's a lot of analytics that can be harvested out of it to manage cities better, to drive intersections. So if you know certain intersections, cars are getting hit again, and Hertz knows that, but also a city can know that and figure out how to drive differently. So just wanted to add that.
Yeah, definitely agree. I mean, seamless transition from a connected home to a connected vehicle to a smart city. I think that's what's coming. I feel like we can talk about this topic forever. But we're out of time. I want to thank our audience for listening and all the participants for making the effort coming out here and expressing their opinions and giving the color that we were looking for. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Serhad.
Well done.